No one expected a controversy. No one expected headlines. And certainly no one expected that one sentence, spoken casually, almost carelessly, would ignite pride, spark debate, and flip the global military community upside down. But that's exactly what happened. The day a US military officer laughed and said, "Filipino training? That's not real training, that's warm-up." It happened during a multinational joint exercise in Palawan, where American, Filipino, and several Asia-Pacific forces were preparing for combined humanitarian and combat readiness drills. The heat was relentless. Humidity clung to uniforms like wet sandpaper. The air smelled of salt water, sweat, and adrenaline. Filipino troops had just completed a coastal infiltration exercise, scaling rocks, navigating mangroves, and carrying simulated casualties through uneven terrain. They were exhausted, but proud. Some smiled. Some nodded. A few dropped to the ground, breathing heavily, satisfied with the effort. Then, everything changed. The American officer, Major Stephen Carter, stood with folded arms, shaking his head. A smirk crept across his face. And then, loud enough for every soldier to hear, he said, "If this is the best the Philippines can do, I'm not impressed." Silence. The kind of silence that feels heavier than thunder. Filipino soldiers stared at him, not with anger, but with disbelief. Their commanding officer, Colonel Andres Villanueva, said nothing. Not yet. But something shifted. Respect had been pierced, and the wound spread fast. No one knew a journalist nearby was live-streaming the exercise. She wasn't hunting for controversy. She wasn't chasing headlines. She was simply doing what reporters do, documenting routine training, the kind of footage that usually ends up archived and forgotten. But the moment those words left Major Carter's mouth, her expression changed. Her eyes widened, her grip tightened on her phone, and without speaking, she kept recording. She knew something had just happened, something that couldn't be ignored. Within minutes, the clip was online. At first it spread quietly. A few views, then a few dozen, then a few hundred. But anger travels fast. Pride moves even faster. Within hours, it was everywhere. Filipinos across the world reacted. From Manila cafes to quiet OFW bedrooms in Qatar, from naval ships in the Pacific to small apartments in California, where Filipino veterans watched silently, jaw clenched. Some were furious, typing responses with shaking hands, fueled by frustration and pride. Some were heartbroken, because disrespect hits harder when it targets sacrifice. But most shared one simple message, repeated across thousands of screens. Don't underestimate us. Comment sections exploded. Hashtags surged, screenshots multiplied. Respect the Philippine soldier. Not a drill. Filipino strength news anchors debated it. Former soldiers shared their own stories, memories of mud, heat, hunger, and training that pushed them to their limits. Military experts argued over tone, protocol, and the deeper meaning between the lines. And slowly the conversation shifted. This wasn't just about one insult. It wasn't just about one man. It became about representation, history, identity. Suddenly, this wasn't just a training comment. It was a challenge to national pride. And now, the whole world was watching. That Filipino soldiers weren't defined by size, gear, or budget, but by something stronger, something no measurement could quantify, something no insult could diminish. Discipline, endurance, heart. The room fell silent. American officers exchanged glances, some curious, some uneasy. Major Carter leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, expression unchanged, as if the challenge meant nothing. But everyone else felt it. This wasn't just a proposal, it was a statement, a line drawn with dignity, not arrogance. A quiet declaration. Respect must be earned on equal ground. Colonel Villanueva continued. 5 tests, 5 skills that matter in real operations. He spoke slowly, clearly, not to intimidate, but to make every word land with purpose. Navigation through unknown terrain. Physical endurance under full load. Survival and adaptability in the field. Weapons proficiency. And extraction under pressure. No shouting, no dramatics, just facts. Real soldiers knew. These were not games. These were the skills that decided who lived and who didn't during real missions. A senior American commander finally broke the silence. "Colonel, are you certain this is necessary?" Villanueva nodded once. "It is," he answered softly. "Because pride is not the issue. Truth is." The proposal circulated quickly, from command desks to diplomatic channels, from briefing rooms to public networks. And as soon as word leaked, the internet exploded again, this time with anticipation. Millions followed updates. Streaming services began competing for rights to broadcast the challenge. Military forums buzzed with predictions. Some said the Americans would dominate with precision and technology. Others insisted Filipinos would surprise everyone with grit and adaptability. But no one could deny one thing. The world now waited. Not for an apology, not for another debate, but for a moment that would settle everything where it mattered most. In the field. Preparations began. Schedules were confirmed, equipment was inspected, and somewhere between the tension and the excitement, a shift happened. The story was no longer just about an insult. It had become a test of character, a test of respect, a test of truth. And both nations, whether they admitted it or not, were ready to witness history. The world watched. Thousands gathered around the coastal terrain. Millions streamed the broadcast. The challenge would test terrain, navigation endurance and load-bearing close quarters survival simulation, live-fire accuracy, emergency evacuation under pressure. Major Carter stepped forward confidently. Colonel Villanueva simply nodded. And then the whistle blew. Event 1. Navigation. The Americans studied their GPS and maps carefully. The Filipinos disappeared into the jungle like shadows. They knew the land. They knew the rhythm of nature. They moved with instinct, not hesitation. The Filipinos won easily. Event 2. Endurance. A brutal uphill march carrying full gear and a 50-kilo dummy stretcher. Halfway through, sweat poured from helmets and vests. Some struggled, some gasped, but Filipino troops kept pushing, step after step, steady, silent, synchronized. They crossed the finish line first. Event 3. Survival simulation. This time, the Americans performed well. Major Carter demonstrated precision and discipline. Both teams completed the event, nearly tied. For the first time, Carter looked serious. Event 4. Marksmanship. This was supposed to be his moment, his specialty. He fired, sharp, controlled shots. His score was excellent. But when it was the Filipinos' turn, hit, hit, hit. Every shot was smooth, not rushed, not tense, just focused. The crowd erupted. Scores, neck and neck. Everything came down to the final test, emergency extraction. A simulated wounded civilian had to be treated, stabilized, and carried across jungle, mud, sharp coral and river crossings. Carter rushed. He barked commands. His team moved fast, maybe too fast. Bandaging slipped. Communication broke. Momentum collapsed. Meanwhile, the Filipino team moved differently. Quiet communication. Steady breath. Discipline, not panic. They stabilized the patient, built a stretcher from bamboo, and crossed the terrain as one. When they reached the finish line, the crowd didn't cheer immediately. They watched. They absorbed the moment. Then the flags rose, and the cheers exploded. Major Carter stood still, shoulders heavy, ego crushed, eyes lowered. Colonel Villanueva approached. He extended his hand and said softly, "Strength is not loud, Major. Sometimes the strongest are simply the ones who don't stop." Carter hesitated. Then he shook the hand, slowly, respectfully. The handshake became the moment the world shared, far more than the insult. Carter didn't leave. He stayed, not as a challenger, but as a student. He trained under Filipino instructors, enduring heat, mud, jungle, and waves. He learned humility. He learned discipline. He learned respect. And finally, he understood. Months later, he spoke at a military conference. The Filipino soldier is not defined by equipment or rank. They are defined by resilience, and the world should learn from them. His words received a standing ovation, not because he praised the Philippines, but because he transformed. Sometimes the strongest battles aren't fought with weapons, but with dignity. And sometimes the loudest victories aren't heard on a battlefield, but in the silence after respect is earned.